Welcome to Beyond Recovery, everybody. And I have another special guest from across the pond, as I say. His name is Zack, and he's coming to us from Leicester, UK. How are you today, Zack? What's going on?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Really excited to be here to talk to you. This is the first time I've appeared on a podcast. So
no way, that's awesome.
Yeah. So slightly nervous, but overall pretty cool. Thank you.
Excellent, that's great. Well, I'm honored to have you as your first podcast. That's tremendous. That's really cool. So yeah, we met through the Instagram sobriety community, which is just fantastic. Can't say enough great about it. I definitely like what you're doing with your Instagram. Like, you're really championing, personal development, and specifically like keeping fit and all that. So we'll definitely get into that. But I'll give you an opportunity to what was just go back to your origin story essentially with alcohol. What was it? What was your relationship with alcohol initially? What did it look like? How early did you get into it? Just the whole picture. Was it like, did it run in the family? Just the whole, your whole origin story, please.
Yeah, of course. Starting right from the beginning, like my parents are divorced. They divorced when I was like 2. And so I kind of lived like, they're very different people. And so I lived like, quite a split life. So in the week or most weeks, and then like every other weekend I go to my mum's, but in the week I'd be at my dad's, and it was very like go to school, etc. It's quite stable. And then at the weekend, like every other weekend, I'd go to my mum's, and she would live like further away, so there'd be like a bit of a journey. And then like she was more of like loved music, loved like, I don't know, just a different side of life. She's more of the like a free spirit in that way. So I had like very much like two sides of life growing up, where like I'd have the stable side, the stability with my dad, and then like the different experiences with my mum. And I was always quite I suppose nowadays we'd call it like almost like anxious child, but I was very like quiet and shy. And in school, during when I was probably from about 5 onwards, I was like bullied quite a bit in school, and that led to me, because they were my people that I thought were my friends that were like bullying me. I'd kind of like just want people to be friends with me, so I'd like just try and please people, and it ended up with me being like very quiet, and not so good at like the social aspect of things, to the point where this was all happening on the stable side of things. And I would I would be going to school every single day and this happening, but I couldn't really run anywhere away from it. And that kind of shaped me into like quite a quiet, socially awkward individual. And the reason that I mention all of that is because by the time that I reached about 12 years old, that's when I first had a drink. My mum was friends with like a lot of musicians. She's a musician herself. And so like there'd be like quite a few like parties and things where perhaps I was a bit too young to be around, but I'd be like in my room on my computer, and they'd like people would like come up and offer me a beer and things like that. And these are all like musicians and artists and people like that. So they didn't really care. They're probably like too drunk, or like, as we say, off their faces, to care about how old I was. And I was also quite mature for my age, probably just from my mum was more like a friend at that age and things. And I think that's quite a common thing, where you grow up too quickly, even when you're like still a child, of course. And so I think at 12, I'd been offered a drink before that. That's a really weird memory and a bit of an aside. Like my nana, which is my mum's mum, I think she wasn't all there, offered me a Bailey's, saying it was chocolate milkshake. It's like and I like spat it out and hated that. That was about 5 years old.
Wow.
And then, anyway, that's an aside. That didn't turn me into like some it didn't turn me into an alcoholic. It was yeah, about 12 years old, I had those first few beers, and I probably had like 2 or 3. At that age, you have no tolerance. I was like drunk, and I was like, oh shit, this is making it a lot easier for me to talk to people. And so as I like grew up, it wasn't like a regular occurrence. I wouldn't say until like maybe like a year or two later, but I was sort of the one sharing my friends into that world. As you know, as you become
Mm.
a teenager, the drinking culture in the UK is like massive. It's definitely a problem. Maybe we'll get into that a bit more later, but it's very much the norm to drink from like quite an early age in your teenage years. So like as I was like 13 and 14, I was getting my friends more and more into it. I was a musician, and at that age, like your small town is like your world, and I was like local musician. So in order to be like that, you know, party animal, and to like even to perform gigs and things like that, I was having a drink beforehand. And at that point, looking back now, I think like I was very much like using that as a crutch. If you'd it was like two people, like when I was sober, I was very quiet. I was very shy. You know, people would probably think I was a bit strange. And then when I was drinking, I was like complete extrovert, out of my shell. You know, talking to everyone. Like I had a lot of comments about how good I was as a frontman in a band, because I was like jumping around on the stage, jumping into the crowd, but it was all alcohol fueled, and it was but I loved it, because for a while it was very much, you know, it was like that liquid confidence, as it is for a lot of people. But it was like people would say like I was a completely different person, and I hated that, but I couldn't do anything about it. And I wasn't like, I think I wouldn't. It depends how you class alcoholism anyway, but I kind of class myself as more of a grey area drinker. I'm you know, I always say to people like, I could probably have a drink tomorrow and be fine, but I'm not a very good drunk. I'm like a problematic drunk. And yeah, that's when it started to become like a regular thing. Like every weekend, sometimes like in the week after school, I would be drinking. You know, like even we have like these bottles of like cider here in the UK, like really cheap 2 litre big bottles that you can get. Not the cheapest ones, but like, you know, I had some class still. But yeah, but so like, you know, we a lot in the UK, you end up like going like into fields and like parks at night to drink. Um, and like, that's widely accepted. And so I was doing all of that, and yeah, I guess that I was well into that up until I went to university. I moved from um, Leicester, where I am now. So I say Leicester, but it's Leicestershire. It's like a smaller town within the county, the wider county of Leicestershire. And I always wanted to get out, and so I went away to do music in London at university, and loved London. But London's like such a party city. There's always somewhere to go, always somewhere to drink, as capital cities often are. And I think it probably got worse when I was at university as well. Like when I first got to university, we call it Freshers Week over here, which is when you know, you're a first year, you first get there, and there's like events on every night, as is the drinking culture, like the clubbing scene, and like the university arranges it, and every single night you go out. Well, I think I carried on Freshers Week for about 2 months, and I got to the point where whenever I didn't have a drink, I had the shakes, and I was being sick. And there's a lovely picture of me somewhere that my friends that I just met, like in that first like month or two, had taken of me throwing up into a plastic bag on the tube station. Yeah, and at the time, like that was funny. Like I didn't really care like too much. It was like, oh, it's hilarious. And the joke got old like relatively quickly, but that was probably the worst that I got in terms of frequency. Was I was every time that I didn't drink, I was like throwing up, and that was bad.
Mm.
And then I sort of like started to calm down after that, but the fact would remain that I would still be a like a bad drunk. Like it was a roll of the dice whether I'd be going out and being a good drunk, or whether I'd be like an awful drunk. And yeah, so I mean, sorry, that's kind of going into when it turned bad, but it wasn't all bad. For a while, it was like this magic potion to let me be social, to let me get out there and be a party animal and be the person that I wanted to be.
Yeah. Ooh, that's a good quote for sure. No, that's great. Let's no, really good background on everything. There's a lot that's I kind of highlighted some notes. I'll circle back to some of the things you said, but yeah, it's so funny. The more people I interview, there's some commonalities, right, between some folks, and there's definitely some commonalities between me and some of the people and man, it's like there's a lot of what you said. Like I had the bullying, I was a musician as well. I had the split personality, I had divorced parents, right? So very similar, a lot of similarities. I was like, man, you're saying it. I'm like, yeah, for sure. I totally get you.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's I want to go back to it like a little bit. There's a couple of things you mentioned. So specifically, like, and I want you to see what your take is on it. Like the whole idea of being like a people pleaser. I imagine it had origins with your parents, right? There's like this, dissonance between your two parents. You have this, you're going to your mom's, you're going to your dad's. Each time there's a degree of like having to, recalibrate who you are and what your relationship is with them. And there's still some like, I don't know, was there like, were they able to coexist, or were they at odds, or what was your parents' relationship like after the divorce?
Yeah, not good. So
Okay.
exactly what you were just saying. Exactly what
Right.
you were just
Yeah.
saying there. Like, it wasn't a good divorce. I mean, I was 2 when it happened, so I can't remember like that far back. But
Sure.
the people pleasing thing is spot on. Like I would constantly be going between houses and
Yeah.
adjusting who I was, and like making sure that I got the story right, that one parent would like, that the other parent would like.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that probably went on like until I mean, they're okay now, like they're fine around each other now, but I think I was like 23 when the first time that they were in the same room, which is
Wow.
when I graduated. So that's like a good 20 years where like I'd want to portray them both as good to the other parents, because they both obviously loved me. Like I will say, my parents both had completely different parenting styles, but they both loved me very much, still do, still support me to this day. And yeah, definitely, they were, and they both had like their own stuff going on as they were trying to raise me. They both did their best, I think. But yeah, I was totally just going like between the other, and like, not, I wouldn't say I was probably just like embellishing stories and leaving
Yeah.
and omitting
Omitting.
to
Yeah,
make sure
exactly.
that they were okay with it.
Yeah.
And not only was I doing that there, I was also doing that with my friends at a young age, because I didn't want them to like bully me essentially. So
Yeah.
it's like one would spread a rumor, and then it's a strange dynamic. Like, so a rumor was spread around about me, which I would then get picked on for, and then they'd be my friends like the next week. But then I didn't know when it was about to change, and they'd go back into it. But because they were my friends, and because I was like, when you're in primary school, and there's like, say like, so that's our like I don't know what you call it over there, but like from 4 to 11
Oh, okay.
school.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, there's only like about 30 people in like our class, and
Mm.
so very close knit, a lot of people, and if like 20 of them are like being horrible to you, but like they're the popular kids, they're the ones that you want to fit in with. And for a while, like it was very, very strange. I was the popular kid, but at the same time, like if depending on the day of the week, I was like being like bullied quite badly, and everyone was like, calling me names and being like horrific to me. But I'd want to carry on being their friends because there was no other option until like I got
Mm.
to distance myself from that. When you go on to the next schools over here, and there's like a lot more people, there's probably like 3-4 times the amount of people in the school at that stage, and then it grows again the older you get. So like you can start to distance yourself from that. But it was always in my mind, and like it led me to like hate the town I was in, and
Mm.
for me to leave that. But going back to the people pleasing, yeah, it was a common theme throughout my life. Probably less so in the teenage years. Like that's when I rebelled and I tried not to care as much about what anyone thought. But
Right.
as a fully developed adult, I tried to work on that from like my early 20s onwards of actually like healthily dealing with being a people pleaser. And I'm still not sure how you deal with that. Like I think for me it was just making sure that I could say no to people. And yeah, now I'm sober, like it's a completely different story. But like, yeah, just with my parents, that's a good example. It's just like letting them know, just being honest with them and like letting them know what the other parent is like, warts and all, and it's up to them whether they like it or not. But now because I'm an adult, there's not a lot they can do about it. So that's been really good for me, like coping with that. Sorry to go off on one there.
No,
yeah.
that's great. Yeah, that all makes sense. So it's very much, yeah, like you say, the older you get, you can start establishing these actual boundaries. And now, especially with a sober head, you can like, okay, this is what's important to me. It's not as for me, and I see if this resonates with you. For me, is my initial, it was a very I was very selfish when I was drinking. Versus now I take care of myself. That's the difference, right? Before I was thinking I was taking care of myself, but what I was doing is taking care of my addiction, my drinking. I was making sure I had enough time in the evening to drink. So I would be like, make sure nobody was going to call me. And I already talked to my mom or whatever it may have been, right? And then so very selfish and hiding and manipulative behavior versus now I'm like, okay, I can identify with what I'm actually taking care of myself and I have boundaries and I can say no. That's kind of what you were saying as well. Like, so I definitely, that's good for you though. Cause that's a tough one to grow out of, right? You feel that you're potentially disappointing somebody by, putting yourself first. And this is a strange dynamic to grow out of people pleasing.
It's tough. Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's like completely gone. But I've a lot of the people that are close to me that I love are also people pleasers. And so it helps me to be able to say to them, like, you can say no to things. You don't have to do everything just because other people want you to. And that's sort of, it's a reminder to me every time. But I still I still feel the same way occasionally about putting myself first. I think I just had a realization, like, if you don't put yourself first, how are you going to, one, help other people? And it's that whole you can't pour from a glass that's empty, and various sayings like that. And it's so true, isn't it? So I for me, I was definitely selfish as well before, and it was very much like look after number one, but not for the right reasons. And
totally.
I had to grow out of being selfish as well. So it's like it's a lot of what's the word? It's not paradox, like being a hypocrite. It's like being selfish, but also people pleasing. It's like it's an oxymoron.
Yeah,
sort of situation, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, well put. I was like, there's a friend of mine who's a coach, and she always mentions it's like, when you're on an airplane and you see that card about like what to do if the plane's going down. And it always tells you to put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because otherwise you're not going to be able to help anybody. I'm like, man, that's like a spot on comparison. Oxygen mask on yourself first, right? I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Rad. So when you're talking, I want to get a little bit into like the whole like kind of split personality thing, and I can liken that, especially with when you're a musician too, right? And I'm actually funny. Another comparison is like I'm a front man in a band as well. So that for me, and I'm wondering when it was for you, like that was my way to express myself in a more abstract way. You know what I mean? I could say what I was feeling, but I had this sort of mask of, fiction or like the poetry or something. So you couldn't quite, like, I was still pretty, singing from the heart and whatnot, but my material there was a little bit of like abstract to it. So I could express myself in a safe environment. And people were like, wow, like, I can't believe you, like, I'm usually shy, right? You're up there and you're fronting a band. Was like, what was that like for you as far as having that secondary personality? You mentioned that a little bit.
Very good question. Well, I used the alcohol to one, fuel the chaotic life that inspired the songs. And which made me feel like like a young modern day poet, kind of like, I was thinking about that's, you know, I was living the artist dream, because people still say, and I hate this whole stereotype that people say, like, oh, when that artist sobered up or when they got off
Yeah.
drugs, they that it dries up the stream, right? And
Yeah.
they can't, the well's dry, sorry, and they can't they're no longer any good. They can't
Yes.
oh, I wish Eminem would go back
I
to being a
know.
drug addict. That's when he was great. And
Right.
you know, every single one. But I did, you know, that's what I romanticized it, and I became the subject of my own songs. But
Mm.
I did that by drinking a lot and being fucking horrible to some people, to be completely honest. But framing myself as the hero of the story.
Mm.
And so yeah, there was definitely poetry and like definitely using a mask, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you that at the time. It was just like, you know, this is true to me, and this is the kind of stuff, sort of, you know, it's all true. It's a true story. It's this
Yeah.
is, but now you ask me that, and I've never really thought about it until you've asked me that. But yeah, totally, that was the mask. It was
Mm.
I was always the good guy and the hero of the story, and the romantic interest at the time, who I've probably been like not so great to,
Mm.
definitely was being not so great to, um, was the villain in the songs, so
Right.
to speak. And I think that happens anyway, and especially in like the genres like that I was doing at the times, like pop punk and rock and a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Where that's actually a common theme. Like there's quite a lot of like misogynistic lyrics and stuff. And you look back
Yeah.
now at some
Yeah.
of the stuff from 20 years ago, and it's like it's awful. And you think like,
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable listening to this anymore.
Yeah. No,
It's
funny.
strange, isn't it?
It is, you know, yeah, lots in common here. Same thing. Like I have, okay, so I'm always going to have a nostalgic attachment to like the
Of course,
music, like the grunge, like, but man, when you listen
yeah.
back to it, holy, is it ever depressing? You know, Kurt Cobain was a
Oh yeah,
big, huge, huge inspiration for me. Even a Pearl
yeah,
Jam. I love how Pearl Jam has, grown to the point where they've kind of grown out of that whole angsty period. They're
yeah.
much more, they're like 50 plus, right? So, and their parents, right? They've grown out of their anger, right? But
Yeah,
initially, I was just like, same thing as what you're talking about with Eminem. I was kind of like disappointed that they seem to have kind of
yeah,
calmed down. I'm like, whoa, where's the angst? Like, aren't you angry at the world? And then, as
yeah.
I get older, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. Right. But it's like, yeah, I know what you mean though. Like and like all that 90s grunge stuff was so like, it's, heroin, like people overdosing, killing themselves. And it's just brutal,
Glamorizing.
right? And then, like you say, it's misogynistic. It's like, man, that stuff does not age well, does it?
Yeah, absolutely. But isn't it good that we can move away from that? And I think there'll always be a hint of that with like when it's younger people writing the stuff,
Yep.
the teenagers, the young adults, because they're still figuring that out. And
Oh yeah.
I'm 29 now, so
Mm,
I look back on that with, I mean, all of this time frame we're talking about is like 16 to 22, 23,
yeah.
maybe a bit younger. So like looking back on who I was when I was writing that stuff. So I've learned obviously so much since then. I'm a completely different person. But yeah, back to the original question, split personalities. Yeah, so I would write it sober. I'd fuel it by getting drunk and like causing these issues in my own life, complicate my life, stir the pot, write the songs sober, and that was fine. Like I could write what I wanted to say sober, but I'd mask it up as well in sometimes in like metaphors, similes. I like to think I was quite a good lyricist, but some of it's probably not as clever as I thought looking back.
Yeah.
But yeah, the performance side was where to be who those people wanted me to be, and like we were like semi-popular. We basically, what we would do is we would get like a coach load of people from our hometown. It's like a 20-minute drive to the city, and we'd get a coach load of like 30 to 40 teenagers. We'd offer them out free beer. We did when we
Mm,
could afford it, free beer. So they'd turn up to this venue like absolutely wasted, like all like under 18, like like 16, 17-year-olds, maybe younger in some cases. We'd bring them into the venue, we'd play the gig, we'd also be like pretty drunk, and we'd just like have this like this crowd with us that we'd brought with us everywhere that were like well into it. And for me to be that, like for me to even organize a coach load of 40 people my own age, like I couldn't do that sober, so I'd organize it. But like the actual hosting of that and getting people to the gig, I pretty much had to have had a few drinks in me before that, and then it'd vary between like a few drinks and a few too many drinks on stage. But people liked it, or at least I thought. I listened back to some of it the other week. So if you look really, really hard, it's still somewhere on YouTube. A few of the gigs, and
nice.
We weren't awful, but like I think I'd cringe anyway looking back at it. But for me to like be that front man who's like talking to the crowd and jumping into it, and I was pretty energetic on stage. For me to be able to do that, I had to like get that buzz going and then some. And like it would start off with a harmless like, drink or two, and then it would end up with like I remember when I was a bit older and I was playing a gig and I was so drunk that I think like, I barely played the guitar. I wasn't the front man in that. I was in that band. I was just a guitarist, but I could barely play the guitar. And I just walked out the venue without my stuff. I was in a different city and just like walked out and like left everyone else and just like found my way to the train station and just got on the train back to my hometown.
Just went back.
Yeah,
wow.
just left it
right
all.
off stage. Yeah. Wow.
I was feeling pretty low because I was just letting myself down, and I just think I was being what people expected, going back to the people pleasing. But and people would like make a joke of it by that point and stuff. But when I was in my teenage years, I think it was considered like pretty cool. I was like the local rock star. I was, getting drunk. I was and partying, like trashing stuff, and would have like house parties and things like that. And people loved it. But like looking back now, I'd never like the way I was behaving, like being horrible to romantic partners and stuff, like girlfriends at that time, and I'd probably like cheating on them and all stuff, like horrible stuff, which I look back at now with like complete shame, and I'm happily engaged now, and
congrats.
That's it. Thank you.
That's awesome.
But that's well within the past and looking back on it, but it was normal at the time. It was like just what we did, and alcohol fueled all of that. For sure.
Yeah, no, it's let's get into it. Like, so we're walking our way into when it started, the dark days started coming. You sort of alluded to, it's like at a certain point, it's a couple of drinks, before just while I'm thinking of it, I do have to give you guys props for having like a crowd that came with you. That's an amazing idea, right? So I was like, when I was championing that, I was like, yeah. Not so much, obviously I'm not so much championing the fact that you're paying them in beer, yada, yada, all those details. The fact that you thought of that is quite an entrepreneurial, approach. So kudos to you for that, man. That's actually really cool that you did that. So I just want to give you a shout out for that. That's a cool idea. But let's get in. So the darker days. So you're talking about, I mean, that's a pretty good example. Like you literally basically walk off stage and just go home, like either in the middle of the show or at the end of the show. Right. You're talking, okay, so 2 drinks, the usual, it's almost like that usual story. It's like 2 drinks becomes many drinks becomes, you're having these darker moments of, you can see yourself like treating somebody poorly, but it's just sort of part of the culture. It's just, you're doing it anyways. Let's get a little bit more into that. And when was the shift where you finally are like, okay, like I gotta do something here? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think I was thinking about this earlier, and I don't think I ever had a healthy relationship with alcohol because of the reasons that I was drinking. Like everyone else around me was drinking to have fun, to get a little bit loose, to party, and I was drinking to like forget about what was going on in my brain. Like up until like a couple of years ago, I'd always say like, it quiets my brain. Like it's what I need to stop the chatter, the overthinking. And so I think like even I never had a healthy relationship. It was always, I'm going to use this to be able to talk to other people, to be able to do all of that stuff. And I'm not saying I was like mute at any other times, but like I think I said in an Instagram post, by the time this comes out a month or so back, it would have been saying about like, if you'd have met me and you'd have thought I was like really bad at small talk, and I'm still not great at like just how's the weather. I'm much more like, tell me about your darkest, deepest like dreams and things like that, rather than the small talk. But yeah, I was like a different person. So like, I was always using it as a tool to be someone else. But because I was using that to stop those dark thoughts, to stop that chatter, and I was never like clinically diagnosed. I've been to see counselors and therapists, and stuff, but I've never been like clinically diagnosed. But in terms of like, I've always had like, I've been a very emotional person. I'm much better now, but like, especially when I was a teenager, I really felt those emotions. From like 12 onwards, I was feeling like very anxious, depressed, and my thoughts were quite dark. Like I probably saw things that like a child that age probably shouldn't have seen, and so and then like when I started drinking, like during my teenage years, I was probably doing stuff that I probably shouldn't have been doing then as well. So I was constantly, the more I did stuff that I didn't like, I didn't hate myself. I knew I was a good person. I knew that I was a good person, and this goes back to this whole the hero in the story whilst being fucking horrible to other people. I knew I was a good person. I was just looking to be loved, and I know that. Always known that. I never thought like you're just you're pure evil or a nasty person. You're trying to hurt other people. I've never thought anything like that. I've always been quite self-aware. This is going off on a tangent, but I read started reading self-help books quite early on, like probably when I was about 13.
Wow.
There's a book by a guy called Dan Millman called The Way of the Peaceful Warrior. So I think it's like a cult classic kind of book. They made a film about it as well, like years later. But I think again, it wasn't really that big of a hit. Probably lost money. But yeah, I got into. I think my mum bought me that at that age when I was starting to feel these things, and I wasn't treating myself right from a young age. When I was about 13 was when everything like the emo craze, but like I went through my emo phase, and so like I was like scratching at my arms and things like that. My mum noticed, and she was really good about it. Like she came and got me straight away. We went for like a walk in the woods, like in the woodland, and I'm just like talked it out. She just got me into nature. She's always been quite hippie, so like anyway, she got me this this book, Where the Peaceful Warrior, and I started getting into like how I can help myself and how I can help other people, and like so I've read so many self-help books over the years, it's ridiculous, but I started like 15, 16 years ago reading those. So I was always aware that there was good in me, that I was nice, and that I was doing these things for a reason. It wasn't just me being like vicious and venomous towards people for the sake of it. I just wanted the love, basically, is what I was looking for. And so yeah, so I guess like it was all that to say the foundations were always there. It was never going to be a good relationship with alcohol, because I was drinking for a completely different reason to everyone else. And so yeah, I guess like even during my teenage years, it wasn't great. I was like, we'd always have house parties and things like that, and I'd find myself just chatting shit, is what we say over here, like talking like absolute nonsense, whether it was strangers or friends, and waking up and just feeling anxious and like regretting it the next day, but not thinking about it too much at that stage. Just like carrying on, internalizing it, and thinking, oh, you fucking idiot! Like, why have you done that? Like, and it would go on, and I think I found myself like changing, like constantly moving forward. So like when I fall out with a group of friends, I'd move on to the next lot. And like the people that I was friends with for quite a few years, my band members and others, they were like pretty much as bad as me, like when it came to the drink and like the self-destructive personalities. So like I had like friends who would encourage it, and those friends I stuck with until I moved away to university. And yeah, I guess like I was constantly moving forward. I was constantly moving forward whilst leaving a trail of like shit behind me, and just trying not to think about it too much. And that carried on, and it was great for me because I was just being like, I think, like horrible to like, the main example that I've used so far is like to girlfriends and stuff. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I'd have a girlfriend, but I'd also like not care. On one half of me would like really care and be like, like, oh, I really want it to work. And the other half of me was like going out and just like finding other girls at the time. It's like appalling behavior now. I'm laughing because like to say it out loud is ridiculous. But
Right.
I'd do that. I'd like let down friends. I'd let down people that I loved, like, and I had some proper, really solid people around me who would stick by me no matter what, and I could talk to comfortably sober. And I always got on with women better than I got on with men, especially at that stage. I've always found it hard to have relationships with men, and I think that stems from when I was at school. It was mainly the men that were being horrible to me. Like girls were much nicer, and especially like when you're younger, they get emotions and stuff, like feelings a lot more.
Yeah.
So it's a lot easier to talk to them. And still to this day, like I definitely find it much more comfortable to get on with women than most men. Not all, like talking to you today and like talking to men that you can like talk to on a more than like a surface level.
Yeah.
Is like yeah, exactly. So that's fine. But yeah. Anyway, where's we going with that? Yeah, I think I carried on, and then had this new start. I left my town. I couldn't wait to get out of my town to where all the opportunity was, London. And when I got to London, like I said earlier, I spent like the first 2 months there just drinking every night. And even amongst the hard partiers, I was the harder partier. Like
Wow.
there were very few people that were out drinking me or up later than I was, because I always had like this FOMO, like this fear that if I wasn't the last one awake, then I was missing out. So I was always up till stupid time, and I was always trying to make a connection with people. I was always trying to find out more and get to a deeper connection with people. But when I was drunk, it wasn't coming out right. And so like half the people just wouldn't get it and would think that I'm talking absolute shit. And then other people, like I would talk to them about deep stuff, but then when I was sober the next day, like I'd either not remember it or I wouldn't talk to them about that kind of stuff sober. And that's another common theme. Like I was constantly trying to make this connection with people. Like I was always way more interested in the deeper meanings, the deeper conversation than I was about, the shallow stuff. And a lot of people don't like that, when you start prodding and probing into like the deeper side of them, they don't react well to it. And so I'd either get like a negative reaction, or I'd be so drunk that I was just like slurring my words and trying to like put across like some good thought, but it would come out, I'm sure, completely differently. I wouldn't know half of it because I was probably blacking out, and I wouldn't remember what was going on, and there was just this constant, oh, what happened last night? And I'd fall out with my girlfriend at the time, constantly over it. And yeah, just as everyone else calmed down, I didn't. And yeah, it was not good. And I think like when I felt hurt by people, I would also like spit out venom at them and like try and hurt them.
Mm.
No idea why, but hurt people do things to hurt other people, don't they? So
Yeah, no, that's right. It's exactly a phrase. Hurt people hurt people. It's like a very simple,
sure.
effective, completely true though. Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
That's that really for sure that paints a picture. So I'm gathering that by the time you went to London, just so you're painting a picture. And I'm also finding that there's a sort of a recurring theme of like environment fostering. We've talked about it before and actually said we'll probably get into it later early on in the interview. So this would be a great time to do so. The environment, the people that you're around, that, you know, the actual location. So you went from the smaller town where it's just like you just know a certain amount of people. You have to kind of, you know, to integrate with them, be a certain way, kind of be against the person that you want to be eventually. Now it's your opportunity. You've gone to this bigger city center, and it's a very common thing. As soon as you get out of there, it's out of your comfort zone. Everything gets amplified, right? Including in this case, you're drinking, right? So it's like you go to this, you know, it's like the New York City, or I guess I should say, it could be the other way around depending on where you're from, but you know, it's like the center like to go to, right? And so it's new beginnings, but you're bringing all of this energy with you, and lo and behold, you know, you go down, you go even further with your drinking, right? And it is, again, in this environment of, you said, it's like this, probably like the city that never sleeps. There's always something going on, coupled with your behavior of wanting to stay up and like your curious nature, wanting to have these deep conversations with people. You're staying up late as a result. And then all of a sudden there's no boundaries there. And you're just, I could see where that would really suck you in then.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for someone who is not naturally, or especially at that point in time, not good at talking to people, to then be placed in this massive city, but just within the university, all these new people that I just have to suddenly I'd have to live with 6 of them because we're in dorms essentially. We're in like an apartment together with about 8 different people, but then we're surrounded by about 26 floors of other eight room apartments.
Wow.
And so and everyone's getting to know each other, and you know, you want to put across good impression, like, and I was hanging around with, you know, the lads, and I wanted to like be a bit more like of the lads, and my only way to do that and to like survive in that environment was to drink and be, you know, to be the party animal. Definitely. And the environment, I mean, when I was in my small town, I was frustrated and wanted to get out. I wanted more, so I'd drink to, you know, the escapism, and I was the big fish in the small pond, so to speak, with like music and with the, like with knowing everyone and things like that. And then all of a sudden, small fish in a very big pond, and like. The other thing as well is, as an aside, is to go from being one of the most talented musicians in the area, to then going to London, because I went to the London College of Music, and everyone at the London College of Music is like shit hot. And because my things, I'm not like I'm a grade 8 guitar player, which is like the highest you can get in the grading system. But I'm not really like a guitar solo kind of person. I'm not like a lead guitarist. I'm more of a rhythm guitarist. I play with feel, and I use it more as a tool to songwrite.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so I go to this London College of Music University, where everyone's like ridiculously talented, and like there's a part of you that feels a bit insecure by that. Like I'm secure with the reasons I do those things. Like I can solo and stuff like that. I can read music when I want to, but like, you know, I've got my music theory grades. I've done all of that, but it's not my strong suit. My strong suit is as a producer, as a songwriter. But I went in there with like, I guess, feeling a bit like, oh my God, all these talented people. And then here I am. So how am I going to carve out who I am? Oh, right. I guess I'm the party guy again.
Right.
And it's always the identity. And so, like, you know, again, at university, it wasn't all bad, but I'd end up in arguments constantly with like my girlfriend at the time, and I'd just say like, oh, she's controlling and all of this and that. But like, I was probably being horrible, and and I would like probably storm out and go to bed, like, you know, in my room whilst everyone else is like still having a good time. And it just turned dark with me. And
Mm.
people always used to say like my eyes changed.
Yep.
Like they'd like glaze over. Some people, I can't remember who, at some point they've been called shark eyes. Like they're just
Oh,
like
wow. Yeah.
change. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I'd like turn into this I don't know. I guess I just glaze over and go like very much into like single like tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And that would happen after like 4 or 5 beers, and then the rest of the night is it's a roll of the dice of how good I'd be. But the worse I was, the worse I got. And this carried on. You know, I had some good friends there, and but it carried on probably till I stayed in London for 4 years until about 2016. I graduated in 2015 and moved back home. But basically, it wasn't going too well in London. Completely. I mean, I split up with the girlfriend at that time over it because my mum wanted me to move back to this area because I was just sort of like working in a like a noodle restaurant.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
To make it to. So I was working there to earn money and using that money to pay the rent in order to go to work. So it's just like this cycle
Wow.
of
Yeah. Right.
like having barely any money, no disposable income. And I'd gone there to do music, and so I wasn't really doing what I wanted to. So she was asking me to come back. I was back in Leicester at the time, drunk again, and I texted out my girlfriend at the time saying, my mum wants me to move back, and she said, "Oh, maybe it won't be such a bad idea." And I was like, "Oh, fuck you! Like, if you want me to move back, I will." Woke up the
Yeah.
next day after the blackout, and
Yeah.
like, oh shit.
Yeah.
And then we split up after that, and I wasn't really going anywhere. The people I was hanging around with like sort of encouraged the behaviour. I'd already done the played a gig in a different city, played so badly, I was so drunk, walked off the stage, and I'm pretty sure that day like I'd been drunk the night before. We woke up late, got on the train to go to this gig. I'd probably drank the whole day to cope with the hangover.
Mm.
Used to do that a lot. Used to do hair. We call it hair of the dog.
Yeah. Oh,
Probably
yeah.
do that too.
We have
Yeah.
that over here. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd use that quite a lot. I was a firm believer in that actually until until quite near the end. No matter how disastrous the consequences, but yeah, I'd end up I'd done the gig, played awfully, felt suicidal, and just like walked off the stage. I think I'd finished the set. I think I was good enough to at
Mm.
least stay until the end of the set, and then just
Yeah.
like left them with my equipment and everything. Walked out without saying a word to everyone, and just left and like wandered around the city. Oh, just to finish that story. Wandered around the city. It was too late for the trains by the time I got to the train station. And this was a city quite near my own, and the train station's quite big, but the next train wasn't until like 6 in the morning, I think.
Oh,
And I
wow.
was going to take it back to my hometown, to Leicester. And so I just ended up like sitting around in the McDonald's with like basically just me and homeless people.
Mm.
And like I kept like falling asleep where I was,
Yeah.
and they kept like shooing me to wake up. Um, so in terms of like rock bottoms, like if you were going to pick any, that was probably like the worst one for me. I got on a train, I went back to my mum's house and just stayed in bed for like 5 days, sorted myself out, didn't have a drink during that time, just got my head right. It wasn't the end of my drinking, that certainly wasn't. And I moved back to my hometown like not too long after that. I think that's what put the idea into my mum's head. I think I'd been jumped as well,
Mm.
like in London by a group of people, and like been beaten up essentially by about 6, 7 London thugs, like
Man.
London gang members.
Wow.
Um, Again in a McDonald's, so that was great.
Yeah. Right.
And no one helped me. No one helped me.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was again. I was nearly blackout drunk at that point. I don't think I'd done anything bad that time. I think I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Yeah.
And
Easy target.
yeah,
Yeah.
and my mum had said like move back. So I did. when I moved back here, I still carried on the partying a bit, but there was less people for me to hurt because I was in a different area. I've sort of, as I mentioned to you, I kept going forward and moving onwards and upwards, upwards every time. I'd left a lot of people behind when I came to, when I left my hometown and moved to university. I left all of my old friends behind. Then I didn't like intentionally leave my university friends behind, but because of distance and stuff like that, I didn't speak to them as much. So I was suddenly in the city in Leicester, smaller city, as we discussed, like a lot smaller than London. But you know, I got a job in the NHS, which, you know, health system, and in IT. Had a bit more disposable income, and so I could go out, but I wasn't as bad. I'd still like drink quite a lot, and I made some friends over here I'd go out with like every weekend. It's when I started my health journey as well. Like I started working out in the week, but then and like eat really strictly in the week, and all of this. And I went from being like this really skinny kid to putting on like a bit of muscle. But then at the weekend, I'd just go out and like drink all weekend and like hamper that progress, like hinder it.
Yeah.
Constantly. And so yeah, I carried on with that. I met my now fiance, then girlfriend, and like we met at the first place. I like literally moved back. Within 6 days, I had a job at this place, and she worked at the same place, and we met there. And then a year later, we got together. And this is all to say that when we first got together, she wasn't a big drinker, but at that stage in her life, she was a bit more self-destructive, as was I. We'd sit up and drink like a bottle of Southern Comfort, which I think is rum, like some sort of like some sort of like spirit anyway. Yeah, together, and we'd like drink a bottle of that, and like we'd bond, and we got on sober, we got on drunk, and I just could like talk to her, and I could tell her like much in the way that we're talking now, but with a lot less self-awareness and the reflection. But we would like just talk all night, and just like we'd drink, but I think she went more my way, and she'd drink quite a bit with me, and I'd be the one going, here's the bottle of Southern Comfort, let's open it, let's like pour it in. But yeah, we were both like that for a while, and then she kind of got sick of it. She's she's very much a one glass of wine every 2 weeks kind of girl. Like she's not a big drinker, so which is ideal now. Just as a side note, are you okay with me carrying on? You said about 60 minutes, but I think I keep just talking and talking at you. Is that okay?
It's all good. No, you know, the thing is, it's like 60 minutes, but if it ends up being longer, by all means, I'm not going to, the story's great. And we're getting to the third stage anyways. You're walking yourself into the, what life is like now. So now you've met your, your lovely fiance, right? You got, your life is together. So I get the impression that you were sort of, you just sort of like almost grew out of drinking. Or was there a distinct moment where you had, okay, I can't do this anymore? What did that look like? Or was there like, so you got the Southern Comfort going on. Now you explained that your wife got to the stage that she was this, she kind of grew out of it. What was it like for you? Was it like turning off a dial, or was there a switch and you're just, boom, I'm done with this?
Yeah. So notice I said she grew out of.
Yeah.
I carried on, and like at the time we were living with my mum, and like they they like to drink too, so we'd like still be around that, and I'd still be having the times where sometimes I was fine, sometimes I could like have a couple of drinks and end the night there. That was when I tried moderation. That was good. That was interesting. And then other times where I'd like, probably upset someone, or like there'd be like big arguments with like my family, or all of this stuff. And it's just I was still doing it, but I was starting to like have moments of maybe not so great. And then in the April of 2020, as we all know, COVID hit the world.
Yep.
And I'm sure many people share a similar story. Like it either went one way or the other. I think like people either went really dark into it or managed to like, you know, pull themselves out of it. And when that happened coincided with when we moved out of my mum's house as well. And so the only person I was around then was my fiance, who's, as we've already established, not a big drinker anyway.
Mm.
I was still drinking, but it was just highlighting my bad habits, if you will, like
Yeah.
because it was only me doing it most of the time. It was probably at that stage that I realized how damaging it was. But I'd always like knew that was the thing that I needed to stop. And Michael from Happy Without the Hooch on Instagram had a post the other day saying like trying everything else out except for stopping drinking. And that's what I did. Like
Right.
I started getting up early in lockdown. I started getting up early because I was still working. So like I could work remotely, which is lucky, obviously. It would have been nice to have a little bit of time off. But I was getting up early doing there's a thing called The Miracle Morning by a guy called Hal Elrod. And it's a book that encourages you to get up and do these things called savers. So you're doing things like the acronyms like scribing, so writing and journaling, affirmations, visualizations, bit of exercise, reading, and
awesome.
there's another S in there, but I can't remember what that is. All the good stuff. I was doing all of this stuff. I was getting up early. And again, in the week, I was great at it. But at the weekends, like I'd sleep in because I'd have had a drink. And I was just getting tired of my own shit, to put it bluntly. Like it was getting to that stage where I was like, come on, man. Like, I think I was like 27 or something. I was like 26, 27. You need to start getting your act together now. Because again, a lot of people can like have a heavy session on the booze and they can be fine the next day. They can not have that anxiety. They can carry on. Some of them seem to never have hangovers as well.
Yeah,
somehow.
right.
You know, those people that like can have a drink and it not be an issue. And I wasn't one of those people, and I've got nothing against those people. Like my message is very much like some people can drink and it's absolutely fine. We have to be okay with that.
Right.
Because we can't stop everyone drinking, and some people don't need to. But I wasn't one of those. I was noticing the anxiety it was always there, but at this stage it was crippling. Like I was calling in sick for work with it. I'm pretty sure my immune system was shot, like because of it as well. Like the anxiety mixed with like that immune system going down, I was like sick a lot more than I am now. And and I just, do you know what the thing was? It was like I wasn't reliable. I couldn't rely on myself. I couldn't trust myself to not get drunk. And there's been a few times, I won't go into details because it's other people's lives and personal details, but where I really needed to be like up and awake and present and like with them. But because I like gone out and like, don't worry, it'll just be one or two, come back hammered, and go to sleep, black out, and wake up the next day either still drunk or like not being able to get up with my alarm, that I missed out on some stuff. And I was just getting so tired of my own shit. And I think at the same time, like, a lot of my heroes and a lot of people that I look up to were people that were already getting sober. So like, for example, as Eminem that we spoke about earlier, anyone that's younger, Eminem was absolutely huge and everywhere in 2000 to like 2004. And I loved Eminem. And yeah, like we basically at the time, like a lot of those things that people consider like problematic about him now, like for a lot of people like my age and above, like we didn't really think about it like that. But anyway, love Eminem still. But he went through like the whole drug addiction and got sober. So he's been one for years. There's a band called Sum 41 from Canada.
Yeah, yeah.
Their front man,
Derek,
they're one of my favorite bands. Derek
Derek,
Whibley, yeah.
yeah, yeah. He was in a bad
Uh,
way. Like he was drinking himself to
yeah,
death, I believe, right? Yeah,
yeah, 100%. And he's
yeah,
another one. I think he had like cirrhosis of the liver or something
yeah,
very similar.
yeah. That's
One
right.
more drink, you'll die type
Crazy.
situation.
Yeah.
Um, and like that was my childhood hero, man. So like him being on deathbed and thinking like, shit, that was one that really hit me, and I was like, you could have lost him. He got sober. A lot of other people, I'll probably forget every single person, but a lot of people that were doing so, and making me start to think, okay, yeah, maybe that's where I need to go. And I never had like a serious rock bottom, as you were alluding to. Like it was more of a, I didn't like just naturally grow out of it. I was just sick of my own shit. I wanted to
Yeah.
progress. I wasn't in the career that I wanted to be in. Like I wanted to start a digital marketing agency and go down that route because I loved that kind of stuff. But like whilst I was drinking, I was just constantly either letting myself down or the anxiety was so large that I was constantly going one step forward, two steps back,
Mm.
and things like that. And yeah, it was just I got to a point where I was really sick of my own shit, but I'd also started doing the healthy stuff over like outside of that as well. So sorry to ramble on. I'll get to the point. Is I in October of 2020 I did a program called 75 Hard, which is by a guy called Andy Frisella, who's another guy. I'm not sure, big massive beardy guy, but like don't really agree with him on a lot of his politics and stuff like that. But I kind of I agree with like his mental toughness talk and things like that. And I've always like spoke to myself quite matter of factly, like my internal dialogue as I've got it over we spoke at the start about how it was very much like horrible, but it's over the years as it's developed, I've got it to a stage where it's actually I'm quite nice to myself, but I'm constantly like, you didn't do this, right? You need to do that. You need to get this done.
Yeah.
And sometimes that came across. That's another thing that came across to other people when I was drunk, especially when I was drunk. I'd talk to them. I could talk to myself, and that would cause issues as well.
Sure.
So yeah. So Andy Frisella, 75 Hard. That's a program which I'm currently doing right now. Again, actually. You might have seen it. It seems to be all I'm posting about at the minute. I need to get some more sober stuff out there. But yeah, the program is. Let me just get my phone so I don't forget it. It's so you do two workouts. You do a 45-minute workout inside, and one has to be outside. So you do two 45-minute workouts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you have to take a progress picture. You have to read 10 pages of a non-fiction book. You have to drink a gallon of water. You have to follow a diet and have no cheat meals or alcohol for a full 75 days. And you have to do this every single day, 75 days straight. And if you fail on any of those days, then you go back to the beginning. And yeah, it is pretty intense. I've had people say to me, oh, that's quite intense. But it's one of those where it really kicks you into gear. And like I'd been wanting to do it for like a good, I don't know, like 6 months. And I was always like, oh no, but it's my birthday and I want to drink on my birthday. Oh, it's summer. I'm going to want to drink over summer. And I kind of found the perfect window of opportunity to do it was around October, because it led up to Christmas, and it was like basically a week before Christmas I could basically finish and go back to it or whatever would come after that. And I really like discipline for myself nowadays, and I find it really. Some people say it's like quite intense. It's not for everybody, and like even amongst my friends and the people I know that are like very driven, very purposeful, it's not for them, or it's not for all of them either. And anyone that asks me about it, I always say like it's not for everybody, but for the people that can do it and want to try it, it's incredible. It's life changing. and you get like great fitness results from it because you're working out, and like the workouts don't have to be like you define them yourself. So for me, I do resistance training, and then so like weightlifting, but then my morning one will be like a walk. So I'll wake up at like 5:30 and go for a 45-minute walk.
Nice.
And then as I progress along the program, I turn that into a run, and that becomes like a works up to like a 5K and stuff like that, which for a lot of people isn't that much, but for me, the last time I did it after years of drinking and smoking, it was
that was a lot.
and a bit of low level asthma. Yeah, it's quite a lot. And the whole thing about it is like not giving in to that inner voice. He calls it the bitch voice because he's all like hard and stuff. But that voice within us that tells us to take a shortcut, that tells us to it'd be okay if we don't do that. Maybe we could just like, we'll get away if we don't do that workout today, and we'll do it tomorrow. So like it's the whole program is defined as a mental toughness program about getting beyond that voice. And I wanted that because I wanted results and I wanted resilience. I wanted to get my mind to a place where it's bulletproof basically. And I think that's a constant battle, but I did it first try and I loved it and I thrived. And there were so many times, even when I'm doing it now, this time where I'm reading my 10 pages in bed and I'm like starting to fall asleep. And or like it's got to 11 o'clock and I haven't been on a walk that day because I ended up doing the workout in the morning, because the weekends are slightly different, which is a bit of a theme here. Routine is all fine and good in the week, but when it comes to the weekend, like you're not following that same routine necessarily. But anyway, it changed my life because I didn't drink during that time, and the first time that I did it was I'd done 1 month off the booze. We have a thing over here called Sober October.
And we do that too.
Cool. And we have it for pretty much every month. Dry January, dry, every
dry July.
Month. Exactly. And I'd done that when I was at university, and it was like hell on earth for me. Like people sponsored me a lot of money because they actually knew how difficult it would be for me to go a month without alcohol. And at that time, the only non-alcoholic drink was this one called Beck's Blue, which was like a beer alternative. It's actually, I think they improved the recipe, and nowadays we have so much choice. But then it was very much the only thing in there, and all my friends were like, partying in the local bar, the local pub. And I hated it. So when I did 75 hard this time around, 75 days without booze, and there were social events in there, I really struggled. But it gave me that time away from it to like realize that there's an alternative, there's a better way. So I did 75 hard. Like it was really great results, both physically and mentally. I was really proud of myself. And I got to, I think it was about the 20th, maybe before Christmas, 20th of December. And I kept it up for a couple of days doing because it's one of the things that this time around, I'm on day 15, so I've got quite a way to go. But this time I really want to focus on what about afterwards, because I don't want to lose that momentum. I don't want to lose that discipline, that resilience, that routine, and which is what happened. So December 2020, after I finished it, I just got straight back into the drinking. But because I had a break from it, my tolerance was a lot lower. Around that time, I'd gone straight back into it, had more, tensions were strained with my fiance. She wasn't, I don't think she was like, there was no like ultimatums or like proper arguments, but she was like, she didn't like that I was, say like we had like people around, everyone else would have a couple of drinks and I'd have about 7 or 8 and be like, right guys, this is what we're going to do. And like, that was obviously unfair on her. And like, around that time, I'd just gone back a little bit. I'd had a couple of times around then where like I'd argue with people when I was drunk, or I wasn't trying to be horrible to people, but again, it was just like the way I talk to myself comes out. And people don't like how direct that is, and I'm not saying like, I was a bit of a dickhead, as we say. And yeah, and there was a couple of times where, I was just a bit shit, basically. But that was enough that on the 2nd of January, 2021, so just after Christmas, I allowed myself New Year's Eve, and then New Year's Day, and then January the 2nd was the last time I had a drop of alcohol. And I just,
Nice.
I've been talking about it to her, to my fiance, and I've been talking about it to like some others. And I just said, like, look, I'm not going to do it again. And then, like, you're not going to have another situation where I'm going to show myself up or I'm going to be upsetting people because of booze. Might do it for another reason.
Sure.
It won't be because of alcohol.
Yeah.
Because I still, she says I've got a very red personality. I think you've got these different personality types where you can take a test and you get these different colors. And I'm a INFJ as well, and all the like all these personality types that it turns out, if you believe in those things, quite abrasive. Because I'm quite it's the rarest personality type, and I think it's like I don't get on with people that well on a surface level, but I'm great on a deep level. I can come across as quite like direct and blunt, and I don't mean to be, but it's just how I talk to myself. And sometimes, I think sometimes we have to be careful to like not expect the same from others that we expect from ourselves. Don't put those same expectations on people.
Totally. Yeah.
But that's an aside, and that comes later on. I basically she was saying to me, like, you don't have to go that extreme, like you don't have to give up, alcohol completely. Why don't you just have like 2 or 3 when we do these things? And she really didn't get moderation, because that's not her reality. Moderation is her reality. She can have 1 or 2 and then switch to the very British tea or water. She loves tea. Like, she's always on, and she'll still do that now. She'll have like a couple of drinks, then switch to tea, and that's absolutely fine. And I had to sort of like explain to her, like, no, I've tried it. I've tried moderation, and it just doesn't work. I can go days and days and days without drinking. Like, I'm not an alcoholic in that sense of like I'm not dependent upon it in that sense. But this is why I define myself more as a grey area drinker, because once I start, I'll have about 8 that night or more, and black out. And so I'm a problem drinker. I'm a problematic drinker.
Right.
But I can, so, it depends on your definitions, doesn't it? I'm not bothered either way, to be honest. The bottom line is I can't moderate when I drink, and I'd realised that by that point. And I was just sick of it. I just wanted to move forward. And so, the first couple of months were early sobriety. I think like I'd made the decision, but I wasn't sure if I was going to stick to it for the first couple of months. I think a lot of people have that. A lot of people I've noticed, because I've been following sober accounts for quite some time. My sober Leicester account is relatively new. I only started that in the end of March this year, 2022.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But before that, I was on my my personal account following a lot of these people that all the big guns that are on there. And I kind of, from seeing that, I'd seen that a lot of people will only do like a couple of months, and then they realize, oh, actually there's no going back.
You're right.
And I was sort of like that. I'm very competitive, as you may have picked up from like this talk of self-discipline and all of this. And so like I never wanted my streak to end. I never, like, and I still don't. And so like I just kept going and going, fully aware of the reality that I did need to stop. And the first few months were rough, I'm not going to lie. A couple more friendships broke down during that time, that were like a delayed reaction from when I was drinking. One particular weekend, I won't go into too much detail, but we'd gone away with some friends, and I wasn't completely in the wrong here, but I'd given up nicotine. So I'd given up smoking ages ago, but I was on nicotine lozenges, and I got addicted to them. Right. got quite an addictive personality, as most of us do in this space. And video games, nicotine, alcohol, you name it, it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And so I have to limit myself. But I'd got addicted on these like lozenges, and I stopped taking them and replaced them with chewing gum just as we were going away with friends. So I was drinking quite heavily because these were friends that loved a good drink with us, loved a good party, but I was weird, man. Like I was I was like a strange personality. And so like I ended up upsetting them, but they upset. Like I say, it wasn't not to sling shit at each other, but we sort of like we were both in the wrong with different things. We'd upset each other, but yeah, that friendship kind of came to a halt like a month or two into my sobriety. And it wasn't that anything else had happened. It was just that we hadn't really spoke since then. And I kept it quite private at that point as well, that I'd stopped drinking. And the first few months were probably the hardest because apart from the fact that you're doing everything like, it's like being naked, isn't it? Like, it's like you're stone cold sober and having to learn basically. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes around about having to learn who you are when you become sober, because like you spend that much time as someone else that you're trying to, as a drinker, or like so much time spent without the reflection. And I had started to do that. I think I'm a very self-aware individual. I think I know my downsides, my downfalls, and things that serve me well. It just took me long enough to kick the one that was actually the main issue. And yeah, so I think like going into social situations like without any booze was quite tough. I eventually found like non-alcoholic drinks, which I'm fine with. I know some people struggle with them. Like low no alternatives is what I'm drinking right now.
What is that one? That looks pretty good. We don't have too many over here in Canada. There's a few, but that looks good.
Yeah, this is a Shipyard American Low Tide. It's an American pale ale from Portland, Maine, USA. Apparently.
Oh, very nice.
I don't know whether it actually is. It's like Foster's is meant to be Australian.
That's right.
Yeah, but I don't think anyone in Australia actually drinks it.
So. I know, isn't that funny? Yeah. We're mostly Canadian here. It's like I shouldn't say like I have some friends that still like it, but it's kind of like no, I'm good, thanks. I'll have something else. Yeah.
Yeah. But the non-alcoholic, the low no alcohol scene over here is really kicking off.
Yeah, that's great.
Like I said earlier, it started with the one drink, and which was the Beck's Blue, and now over the years we've got like supermarkets. It's pretty mainstream. It's rare I'll go to a restaurant that doesn't have at least 0% beer.
Nice.
Whether it's bottle or on tap. It's it's getting a lot better, and I think that's something that's being celebrated. I love that. We have like a soap opera TV show over here, not that I watch it, but called Coronation Street, that's been running for since about 1950 or something like that. And,
I've heard of it. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Just 1 second. I'm just going to let some light in. There we go.
Yeah.
And they've got a fictional pub within the fictional show, and that they have like a tap with Heineken Zero in there now. That's
nice.
Heineken Zero is doing a lot actually. Heineken sponsored the like all the big football tournaments in the past couple of years.
Okay.
So rather on the billboards, rather like the advertising, instead of it being the normal Heineken, it's been the 0%, which is
cool.
The shift in all of that is part of a larger acceptance and movement, I think.
Definitely.
Obviously, they wouldn't supply it if it wasn't in demand, and really cool. So the first few months, I was just sort of like, I think it took me till about 10 months in to like really feel anything close to what we would call comfortable. And like myself, I did a lot of self-reflection during that time. I didn't do like AA or anything like that. For me, it was just, I felt like the only person that could help me was me. And it was, I'm very like independent like that, probably sometimes to a fault. But I'm a very, very independent worker. And yeah, so like yeah, it's just been since then it's just been learning how to live as a sober person. Um, I'm now 500 days today, actually. So
No
that's
way. Oh,
16 months. Yeah.
that's rad.
Um,
What
so,
great timing that we have the interview
yeah,
on day
really.
500. That's super cool, man.
Yeah.
Congrats. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That's rad.
Yeah. And by now, like, I decided some people start sober accounts way earlier in their journey. And I decided to start mine I didn't feel comfortable until I passed a year. That was like
Yeah.
this
Okay.
milestone in my head. Like I
Yeah.
want to get past a year, and then I wanted to start an account. And I don't know if you want to go into like the Instagram bits and pieces and any more.
Yeah, let's do it. Like I always like to give as towards the end of the interview, which we're as we wind things down, we'll just absolutely just go into what your account is all about, because it definitely caught my eye. I always like when somebody has, not only are they championing the sobriety part, but there's also like an alternative you're provided. This is what I'm doing with this, whether it's the newfound energy or instead of the the hiding and the other energy that has you've converted that energy into something super positive. So that's what I really dig about your presentation on your sober account. So yeah, let's tell the folks where you can be found on Instagram and just a little bit about what you're doing with it.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, my account. Look at this. I have to go onto the app to remember how to spell it, because it's a bit of a weird spelling. It's
yeah
at sober Leicester. So that's SOBERLESTR. I'm sure you'll be able to find that elsewhere as well. Maybe in
I'll throw it in the show notes. You bet. Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's not very sustainable to just post about sobriety, and I certainly didn't want to burn out and run out of ideas. Some people are amazing at it. Like, don't take that as me throwing shade at anyone. Like that's
sure.
Some people have got that content all the time, but I'm quite busy, so I don't always have that. And I started the account anyway. It's called Sober Leicester because I wanted, when I reserved the name a while back, just so that I'd have the name when I was ready to use it. I was going to do about the sober events in the area, or like things that bars that people can go to that have great sober alternatives, things like that.
Cool.
It's going to be much more local. But as I started posting, I started off with posting quotes, quotes with, and I had like my branding, like the blue and the pinky color, and did a lot less face posts and like personal posts. And I started off with that just to get into the swing of things. And I've realized that I wanted to be like much more personal with it, and bring who I am to the table much more, rather than it being about like the area that I'm in.
Yes.
Because I should mention, we moved from the city about 8 months ago to the like a bit more like rural, like a rural village, like the countryside, into like a bungalow, and we like got pet chickens, and we've got like free roaming rabbits that run around the house.
Awesome.
Gone a bit country. So yeah. So like I wanted to post more about me as a person, like you say, like not just what I am, which is sober, but what I'm doing with that.
Totally.
And get more into like the personal side of things. So yeah, Sober Leicester just became me rather than about the area. And yeah, I always feel a bit mixed. I think sometimes, like, do people even want to hear about the non-sobriety stuff? Is me posting my morning walks and things like that like good? And I think it probably does split people. Like some people will be sick of seeing me going day 16 of 75 hard, I'm on this walk, and stuff like that. But I kind of have to fit it into my day-to-day, and that's what I'm doing. I have the time to do it. And so yeah, that's what I'm doing. And long story short, like I said, we moved to the countryside, which made the sobriety a lot easier. Once we'd moved out here, about 7 months into my sobriety, it was like clean living. This is why I mentioned that. Sorry, yeah. So that it does have a point. Is It's much more clean living. It's more like fresh air. There's we've got the chickens to look after, the bunnies, the all of that. And we've got the countryside. Like everywhere I look, if I look out the windows, there's trees, there's like woodland,
Yeah.
there's walks, and it's amazing and it looks beautiful. And there's so much nature. And to be able to get back to that has been just incredible. And it's been really helpful for my self-development journey. And I think I've
Yeah.
gone now that I'm better on the like sober is just my default state. I've never been happier. And I will say to anyone that's on the edge and thinking about it, just or maybe even just curious and thinking I'll maybe try it for a few months, it is life changing. It is like
Mm.
I am unrecognizable to who I was before. Just because you gain real confidence, you gain this genuine like self-confidence and belief in yourself. And I mean, that's not to say that all my insecurities have just disappeared. They haven't, but I've got a
Mm.
much better ground to work on them. Yeah, I guess like I wanted to reach young people as well, because there's a lot of especially in the UK, the alcohol, the booze culture is. I think we have a bit of a reputation abroad with like how much we drink, and we do. It's not uncommon to go to most places and on a weekend and there'll be like drunk people roaming around. Like
Mm.
it's not frowned upon so much to get blackout drunk. It's not like
Mm.
I don't know about Canada, but I know especially in America, like if there's a drunk person in public, it's like seen as like I think it's like a crime even in some states, isn't it? Like drunk in
Yeah,
public.
for sure. I've been told to go home a few times. Walking around after being
Yeah.
drunk. It's
Oh
not.
yeah.
Don't get me wrong. You see, especially in a bigger center, you'll see it for sure. But yeah, it's not. It's not
Yeah.
overly acceptable for sure.
Yeah, and especially in your 20s, and I was 27 when I got 27 when I got sober.
Yeah.
I'm 29 now, and like there's not many. There's a few that I've managed to find on Instagram, but particularly sober men in their 20s. There are not a
Right.
lot of, and so
Yeah.
I wanted to reach those people and try and like say like it's okay not to drink. You don't have to, and like that. I think that changes as you get a bit older. Anyway, some people grow out of it, some people don't.
Yep.
And for me, it was about wanting to further my development, and all mine was about self-development and not having that anxiety and not taking 2 steps back every time I tried to take a step forward. And it's probably more like 1 step forward, 10 steps back. But
Right. Yeah.
I needed to get out of my own way. And I think there are a lot of other people that need to hear that. And sometimes you feel a bit like a preacher, but I wanted to reach that audience as much as I want to. Like, I think actually it turns out most of my audience, probably about 60-40 split is like female. So there's more, but that's just the sober community in general. There's like way
Yeah.
more women
I
on
found
there.
that
And like,
too. Yeah.
I think there's
That-
probably more of a stigma for men, isn't there? There's like more of a,
yeah.
it's more
Like,
of a
well,
taboo subject.
well, it's even like what you were when we're talking about earlier is like even to have a deep conversation with men sometimes to get beyond the surface level. It's gotten better over the years I've found, but there's still a degree of that, like, the machismo, like there's a persona, there's a, if you have some feelings, you're going to get made fun of, right? There's still a degree of that, right? And as a result, I get the impression that we aren't as men, speaking on behalf of every man, apparently, are not as overtly sober, right? It's because there's a vulnerability that doesn't quite go hand in hand with males, perhaps. I mean, that's just my speculation, because you're right, though. It's like 10-1, it feels like, women to men in the sobriety communities, right? Whereas guys are still, I'm sure they're there, but maybe they're just not quite as forward about it, perhaps.
Especially
right?
like probably like you say, as forward, like dedicated sobriety accounts and things like that.
Exactly.
And that's fine, because like not everyone needs a sober account. Some people can just follow who they want to.
100%.
That's absolutely fine. I think, like you say, it's just being vulnerable is hard, and there's it's getting better.
Yeah,
it is getting better. People like me and yourself and Michael, who I mentioned earlier, happy with our the Hooch and like Better Life guys. Another one who's like got like thousands and thousands of followers, and is another person who changed their life. And that's what I don't necessarily want to have thousands of followers, but I want to be someone that people who are, don't have to be younger than me, but I want to be someone that people can look to and say like, yeah, if he's done it, I can do it.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that way. There is an alternative. And so I don't know, I struggle sometimes to post, like in terms of bearing all and figuring out, even today before talking to you, it's like, how much do I want to say? Like, because I ended up throwing that out the way, like, because it's better to be completely honest, isn't it? But
it is,
but you never, it's hard to. And like sometimes I'm thinking like, oh, what will like certain family members think about what I'm posting? What will certain friends think about what I'm posting? And you have to try and put that to the side. And I think I've kind of got two trains of thoughts. Like I'm in marketing now, so like that helps with the account side of things, the branding and
presentation and such.
Presentation. I'm not in, I mean, like paid social media, like ads and stuff, rather than organic. So I'm still learning with my own account, but I really love that personal development side of things. So I love like those two things as like career options. Definitely, like I'd like to develop that, the personal development side, especially further. And I don't want my account just to be, this is sobriety. I want it to be, like you say, you can be sober, but here's all the amazing things you can do with that sobriety. It doesn't have to be lifting weights. It doesn't have to be doing stupid 75 hard challenges like I do. There's so much. And I need to get back more into like music again, and playing this guitar behind me a bit more. And and I do that, but like there's so much life to live once you cut out, when you've got all that time back. And you just feel like you're playing catch up, don't you, constantly?
No, you're right. You're right.
And I just feel like I've got like a real point to prove to myself. I know my potential is worth a lot more than what I've, what I was doing. I was squandering it. I was sitting on it. And I don't say that to sound cocky or arrogant. Just, I think we all have more potential than we give ourselves credit for. And I know that I don't want to look back. I have a big thing about about death and about knowing that I'm going to die one day, and I don't want to look back and be like, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. So that's for me. I just want to take everything as far as I can and see where that leads me to. And I still have anxiety, and I still especially social anxiety. Like I'll be completely honest, like thinking about doing a podcast like makes me feel anxious until I'm doing it. But I did a post about this the other day. You just have to there's a great book on it, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. So like just know that you're going to feel those things, but still do them and still place yourself in those situations to succeed. And that's what I'm trying to do with my life and with my page, and just reach as many people as I can. Followers are nice, but engagement's nicer, and it's really cool to talk to people and have people reach out like yourself, and people saying like I really relate to that post, and things like that, and meeting people online through all walks of life. And and it gives me a confidence to do it, and it's been a really cool journey, and I can't recommend it enough to anyone. It's transformative.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Great way to, we'll put a bow on it there. Congrats on your 500 days. At time of recording, 500 days today, my friend. That's amazing milestone. Great stuff.
Thank you so much.
Man, yeah, thank you. And thank you for coming on, telling your story. So much great stuff. I like it. That's what I love about this. There's so many different layers of everybody's got such a different nuanced. There's always like the commonalities, but then there's so much differences as well, nuances to people's lives and context and environments and everything. So really cool, man. I really enjoyed listening to everything you said. And I know, yeah, you know what? I know it's going to resonate with a lot of folks too. And so thank you so much. And yeah, dude, we'll keep in touch. We'll, I always invite my, the guests back on at some point down the road, you know, if you got something coming up, they want to promote, or even just do a check-in. Yeah. You're always welcome back on the show.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, it's been amazing. I've really enjoyed myself. I was just saying, I think it's trying not to talk over you. Sorry if I was like waffling on too much, talking too much, like but I hope people can get something from it. Excuse me. Yeah, I hope to come back and talk to you with an update at some point.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bet. Thank you.